One other area that we're receiving a lot of queries in the current climate is around managing meetings, and particularly AGMs and other statutory business activity. At the end of March, the Business Secretary announced that the UK government would introduce legislation to ensure companies required by law to hold AGMs will be able to do so safely, consistent with the restrictions on movement and the gatherings introduced to address the spread of coronavirus. Companies will temporarily be extended greater flexibilities, including holding AGMs online or postponing the meetings altogether. In terms of board meetings, the stay-at-home measures in Northern Ireland limit the ability of directors to hold board meetings in physical form. There are no provisions in the Companies Act which regulate board meetings, and instead the procedure for calling and conducting board meetings is usually set out in your constitution. That's in your Articles of Association. So therefore you need to check those constitutional documents to see whether your board meetings can be held by telephone or video conference, and the key consideration will be that the meeting is quorate and effective. I think for most companies, particularly private companies in Northern Ireland, the directors are already well used to convening and conducting board meetings with a significant degree of flexibility and freedom. So the key takeaway is, as I said, just to check your constitutional documents and to make sure that they include the appropriate provisions to allow you to do that in a way that means the meeting is quorate and effective. The Chartered Government Institute has issued some guidance giving an overview of the legal and practical steps for virtual board and committee meetings in an attempt to help companies who are struggling with the impact of coronavirus. The guidance sets out the key points that companies should keep in mind so that they can use virtual meetings to good effect while the ban on public meetings is in place to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Some of the guidance points, such as the choice of the right communication channel, is vital. The meetings need to be well structured and avoid unnecessary complexity. You have to make sure that all necessary preparations for the meeting are in place. The chair of those meetings will obviously need additional techniques in terms of running an orderly meeting. And it's important to circulate in advance ground rules for all participants in terms of those joining the meeting, how it will proceed and how questions or clarifications can be raised. You also need to, of course, make sure that there's clear instructions for accessing the meeting system or the app, and that everyone who's entitled to receive notice of the meeting and attend is able to do so. And I think in summary, good boardroom practices are even more necessary now than they had been for face-to-face meetings. COVID-19 has also had a significant impact on companies' financial performance and has raised a number of issues and challenges for companies and their auditors in terms of preparing financial statements. In light of that, companies that do need more time to file their accounts owing to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic can apply to Companies House for a filing extension. Companies House has stated that those citing issues around COVID-19 will be automatically and immediately granted a 3-month extension, and applications can be made through a fast-tracked online system. And we would caution here that it is important that you do put the application in on time. So don't wait until you're past your filing date and then try to claim the extension. Make sure that you get the application in before the extension period is up, in order to avoid any penalties for late filing of accounts. HMRC has also announced that it has introduced a temporary electronic service to replace the usual stamp duty process that some of you will be familiar with. Stamp duty must now be paid electronically and cheques won't be processed, and the taxpayer must then email details of the transaction to HMRC, including an electronic copy of the document that would have otherwise been stamped, So the document that most of you will be familiar with will be a stock transfer form, and that usually is a paper form that would be sent in hard copy to HMRC along with payment to be stamped and returned to you and filed with your company registers or company books, as they're sometimes called. HMRC has stated that it will accept electronic signatures whilst these measures are in place, and they'll then send you back a confirmation letter by email. And again, we would just caution that given the current circumstances, if you are dealing with share transfers or payment of stamp duty, make sure that you do take the appropriate legal advice in that regard to ensure you're complying and doing that properly, because again, there's potential penalties and fines for late filings or filings that are made incorrectly.